Hey folks, it's Matthew and Veronica, and it's a podcast, Sleeping with IT. We talk honestly about business, relocation, careers, mindfulness, and self-realization. Scorching Tel-Aviv and rainy Amsterdam in your headphones every week. Find us on all podcast platforms.
Hey folks, we have a very special guest for you tonight. His name is Basti. He works at Siemens as a lead finance business partner. He lives in Tel Aviv, and he's taken a lot of responsibility for software portfolio of the company with more than €1 million revenue volume in the industrial manufacturing domain. And if that doesn't tell you a lot, don't worry. We are here for this episode to understand more about Basti path, but also to learn about what lead finance business partners are doing and if it could help us to be better at investing our personal finances. So let's get into that. Hey, Basti.
Hi, thank you very much for the short intro. Very exciting to be on the show and looking forward to our conversation.
Same here.
Cool. By the way, we are recording in the Google for Startups Creator Studio in Tel Aviv, but I know for sure that Basti is not from Tel Aviv. Basti, tell us more about yourself as a person, not about your role yet, but let's say, how old are you? How many years did it take you to take this high position in finance? Tell us more. Where are you from? What kind of education do you hold? Tell us more.
Sure. So my name is Sebastian. I'm originally German. I'm currently living in Tel Aviv together with my family. We've been here since nearly 2 years already. Currently, I'm working as a finance business partner at a large technology company called Siemens. Guess most of you know. And I guess we'll dive into that a little bit later. Maybe some cornerstones of my professional way so far. So I started with Siemens with a double degree program back in, that was a long time ago, in 2016 in Germany. Spent 4 years with the company and went to university. So the whole point of the program is combining academic studies with a practical experience. So that gave me a chance to look into a vast variety of financial functions. Like after the 4 years, I entered my first full-time role as a financial analyst in product controlling and product cost controlling in an R&D segment. Spent 1.5 years there and then took the chance, because of a vacancy, to move to Israel and take over the finance business partner role for one of our product divisions. And after 1 year here, expanded my scope to what I'm doing today. Today, I am, let's say, financially responsible for one of our larger product divisions with a small team. And we provide financial guidance and basically help to steer the business.
Wait, so it's been like 3 years from your career start point?
Not exactly. So I started in 2016, graduated in 2020 with a business degree, a bachelor's. And after that, let's say, started my first full-time role for 1.5 years. And after that, moved to Israel. And now I've been here for nearly 2 years. And sadly, I'm currently preparing my move back after 2 really beautiful years with a lot of exciting experiences and a lot of cool people.
That's very impressive career, and I think Veronica wanted to tell you basically that it's impressive that you managed to grow this far in the same company. That I'm personally a bit shocked. For me, growing is frequently connected to changing jobs, and I think like for every person it's their own way. So we are quite impressed that you managed to grow in the same company. That's really cool. And I'm just wondering, you said something that triggered me. You said, I have this financial responsibility. And then I thought, okay, well, how risky is it to be a finance business partner? Do you actually have financial responsibility in a way that you personally kind of eligible, or there is like fines if you don't do your job well, or something like that? Or it means you have responsibility to manage finance at work, not that you kind of responsible if something goes wrong.
Fully get that point. No, it's the latter actually.
Okay, good.
Let's say I'm not in the role of a managing director, like as a CFO of a registered company here in Israel, but I'm basically working across multiple countries, so it's really a global role. And I'm providing financial guidance, financial support with all day-to-day topics as well as strategic initiatives. And I'm basically providing financial transparency to a business and support the respective management team to steer the business. Yeah, so let's say we as finance are more in a role of a support function.
But one needs to be really bold enough to even accept this offer to, first of all, move and relocate to another country in such a pretty young age, and also to really take this responsibility. What are some of the 3 to 5 soft and hard skills that you think have helped you skyrocket your career?
That's a very good question. Not so sure I would agree about the term skyrocketed, but appreciate that. I guess you can basically boil it down to 3 soft skills, I guess, or at least, let's say, cornerstones I defined or found out for myself, which works good for me. I guess applying those 3 things, which I will explain in a second, you can basically acquire all the hard skills you want and you need, right? So first of all, and I think we are going to talk about that a little later, is for me it is super important, and it was a game changer once I found out, let's say, that I can make my day-to-day life in a, let's say, the personal perspective and in a professional perspective way easier by building strong habit systems. Yeah, to include those habits in my day-to-day life, and let's say
they are Germans in action.
included in a way that, let's say, they are more or less running on autopilot, and I don't even need to think about it. Yeah.
Where do you manage it? Like, do you have your Google Calendar with all kinds of habits committed? I mean, family-wise, professionally-wise, how do you actually manage it?
So happy to dive into the details here, because this is, let's say, I read a book about it, and this is one of the questions which was discussed there. And I actually started with some kind of a habit tracker, just a simple Excel sheet. I mean, I'm a, let's say, finance guy in the end, right?
That's actually quite cool, because I know personally an entrepreneur who is currently building a habit application, and he also started from a spreadsheet. And I think like most of the applications for the habits out there are started by people who's organized enough to try to organize their life through the spreadsheet.
Happy to talk about that a little later, because I know that person too. At least it sounds exactly like the guy.
Okay.
Yeah, anyways, I started to, let's say, maybe one step back. I started to asking myself the question, what kind of personality I want to be, what kind of identity I see myself, yeah, and let's say, what's my dream self, and then broke it down into smaller habits, which I need in my day-to-day life, like really repetitive, to finally become that person. And I started off to organize that in a pretty simple habit tracker. But honestly, by now, I don't need that anymore. It just got part of my day-to-day life. And I think it's a good, let's say, it's a good starting help. But after a while, everybody who wants to try it will see that it's, let's say, it will become redundant after a certain while.
And what are some of the key things and routines that help you stay motivated and productive? If you could share with us.
There is a couple of them which go into that direction, let's say, to keep my level of energy up on a day-to-day level. Yeah. There's a couple of others too, but let's say if I could name 1 or 2 of them which go into that direction. For example, I started to meditate frequently, just like 5 to 10 minutes a day in the morning, but it really helps me to take a short break from everything and, let's say, get my head free for the rest of the day.
Okay.
This is, for example, something. Then, of course, let's say, doing my sports and stretching routines to also feel well from a physical perspective. And all that plays a big role for being balanced and energetic, which plays actually a big role.
Matt, I know that actually you have a really intense role and you're a manager and you have a lot on you. And also like launching your own startup is a big thing. Do you have anything, like any kind of tips here?
My first and foremost tip is to meditate, but I think Basti is already on top of this.
What kind of meditations are they?
By the way, I just wanted to add, don't accept any advice from me here. I'm not claiming for myself that I'm an expert here. I basically just sit still and think, right? Or try not to think, actually. But at least so far it works for me. But yeah, I'm open to, let's say, any kind of more comprehensive approaches, and happy to try something new as well.
Wait, so it's an interesting point. You tell that you're not into guided meditation.
No, not at all.
Matthew, what do you say?
I actually started my path kind of with guided meditation. It helped me a bit, but I'm very picky, so I was picking one application after another. And I think I eventually took a nice course on the Headspace, but it's more like I got some elements from it, and now I'm also focusing maybe more like on a silent meditation. I'm by all means not an expert. I would just maybe challenge you, Bast, on trying not to think. I think like it's more like trying not to prevent thinking and not to prevent yourself from stopping thinking. Like, if you're overthinking, you kind of like keep to the same idea and just go through your head all over again. And meditation in that case, for example, is about letting it go, and then it just flows through your head, and then the next thought, and at some point there are less of them, so you are more calm. So you're not kind of like actively, I think, preventing thinking, but it's just like you're allowing the thinking to stop at some point.
Right.
Does it strike the spot? Would you agree?
That's probably a good description. Only thing, before I started, I also Googled some of the basics before just sitting down and start, right? And what stuck with me was this advice from someone on YouTube, I think, who was just saying, don't think about what happened in the past, and also don't try to think about the future, but just try to be in the moment. And this is what I try to do. Not sure if it works that well all the time, but at least it helps me and makes me feel more comfortable than before. But also, I mean, that plays into another point, I guess, which we are discussing in a second. But always open for recommendation, for advice, and always eager to learn other practices and including that in my life as well, if it works for me.
Yeah, and people say that there is no right or wrong way to meditate. If it works for you, if it helps you, then you're on the right path anyway. And back to the question from Veronica, maybe, is that how do you manage yourself under kind of high load situations? Addressed to me, I think the thing that I'm learning this year, so like I was really into meditation maybe a couple of years back. This year I'm helping myself in another way. I'm trying not to be that much organized. So I build a lot of habits as well. So I kind of like know the feeling, but I just realized that sometimes I just need to change my shoes, try a different thing, maybe not do this meditation today and so forth. So in a way that I don't have to always be that person who does all that habits and, answers to everyone on Slack and over email and in time and so forth. So at some point it's just too much. So I'm currently in the process of learning how to be a bit less organized, but still be me.
That's a very interesting idea and a very interesting point. When at some point in your life you start to follow the routines and discipline, but at some point you're like, maybe it's too much. And sometimes I go with the flow rather than just following the routines and discipline, which is absolutely cool.
Yeah, I think we kind of like shaping ourselves into something, and then we realize that maybe we are not exactly that shape, and that's all right. But nonetheless, the process of shaping yourself into something, the process of organizing you, building those habits like Basta did, this is really important. You cannot escape this step. You cannot just become who you are or who you want to be without working on that. So Basta, you're definitely on the right path there.
I fully agree. And I mean, this is a very important point or note to mention, talking about habits. This is a continuous process. It's not that you set it once and follow them for the rest of your life. But this is, I mean, also for me, this is like I'm adjusting my habit system all the time. And I also get what you were saying, Matthew. Yeah. I guess from my own experience, building habits and really, let's say, establishing a routine, I guess also a bit depending on your personality, but it's, let's say, maybe it's even the harder step to actually unfollow them, right?
Yeah.
Because now you're used to that.
Correct.
So coming back to the top 3 soft skills, you've already mentioned some of them. Give us a bit more.
Right. So I mentioned my three pillars before. First of them was the habit system, and second of them, I think we also briefly touched on it, discussing the habits, is always remaining curious and, let's say, just being eager to learn, right? Thinking about or accepting that most probably in life you will never be done learning, right? Because especially in our dynamic times today, I think the world is developing even faster than it was the case like 10, 20 years ago, right? Or even before that. So always keeping up with new trends, with new technologies, new developments, and being curious even beyond the limitations or the boundaries of your professional space. I think this is a really important skill for let's say personal growth, right? And professional growth, actually.
Really want to dive deeper here, because on one hand, you need to really stay on track, like to really get to know all of the latest trends. And together with that, we definitely know that sometimes you feel that you're overexcited. Everything is overcomplicated. It's just too much. So how do you keep track on everything, but not be overwhelmed with everything? What's the tip?
Honestly, the clear answer for myself is, I actually thought about this today. I have big problems to prioritize that and to carefully pick the topics I'm diving into, because let's say that's at least kind of my personality. Once I pick up a topic which I'm really interested in, I dive into that rabbit hole, but at the same time I pick up, let's say, a couple of others as well, and you just don't have the time to dedicate so much effort into learning everything around so many topics. So honestly, here I haven't found the right solution for me yet.
But where do you read it, or like do you watch it from YouTube, or you read some magazines? What do you do?
Yeah, absolutely different sources. Like I listen a lot to podcasts. I listen a lot to audiobooks, mostly in the car. Let's say on the way to the office and back. Yeah, that's mostly it. Reading books, of course, but the books I'm reading are mostly a result of picking a topic first. So once I pick up a topic I'm interested in, then I order a book and read it. Like it's very few times the other way around.
Got it.
So it's interesting. It's like you have this conscious intent to research and analyze, and you just dig deeper and deeper. That kind of, maybe just a quick side question that I was just wondering.
Sure.
If you working in finance, being finance business partner now, you already told us a bit about your career path, but I'm just trying to get a glimpse of what took you down that path, Have you just woken up at the age of 8 years old and thought, okay, well, I need to get to, a degree in economics and finance and so forth? Because for me personally, I realized that I want to be a software engineer when I was 6 years old, pretty early. But I spent most of my life working as a software engineer and then as a software engineer manager in IT in financial sector, which I kind of have like love and hate relationship. Sometimes I really enjoy that I have this ability to work with one of the best professional pool out there and brilliant minds and build really interesting high-load systems. Sometimes I'm just sick and tired of like finances as a topic. So I find it fascinating that there are some people who are really into finance as they are. So how come that you went this way?
That's indeed a very good question, and I wish I had such a cool answer as you just gave, that you, let's say, you knew your professional way or professional dream already by the age of 6.
Oh, don't get into this all of a sudden. I got my first PC many years after these decisions. So it was a long path, and I also suffered on it. So knowing your path early not always makes you happy.
I see. So that's definitely not the case for me. I mean, let's say somewhere in school, I guess, I at least picked up my interest for economics and at that stage, say more the macroeconomic perspective per se. So this is why I decided to obtain a business degree. Also, being very honest, the start with Siemens was more, let's say, was more a coincidence. I applied with a couple of firms, and that was in the end the most attractive option. But I didn't pick the company because, let's say, I like the product or the portfolio of products so much. But over the course of the studies, and especially with my first role, I think I discovered that my skill set fits my current role pretty well. So I'm pretty good with numbers. I have a good analytical thinking approach, I would say. I also think I have the communicative skills to take all those masses of data which we are analyzing on a daily basis and really boil them down to the key insights and put some context to it and tell a story around it, to convey it to management and really derive a strategy from it. So this is what I'm really passionate about. So maybe you already hear that this is not a typical finance job, as most of the people picture it as in, let's say, an investment banker or working in private equity or so. But I'm more passionate about steering a business and defining strategy, building a successful business. And I also can't guarantee that, let's say, my career will always be limited to the world of corporate finance. Maybe I dig in one of those rabbit holes too deep and will pivot at a certain stage.
But I kind of like I get a feeling of the trait you're talking about, this trait that made you probably like very successful in your career. So you have this ability and a knack for analyzing data and data sets, making your own conclusions, and then communicating that to the people around you. So that's a very powerful combination. And then it kind of gets me a hint into what finance business partners are doing. They're not just, they are not accountants. They're not just responsible for profit and loss spreadsheets. So you use that as pieces of entry data, and then you have to analyze it, transform it in your head, and with tools make decisions and communicate those decisions to other departments and parties. And you're good at going from numbers to conclusions to communication, right? At least this is what I picture when I hear you.
Absolutely, that's a good description. So I would actually say the data analytics side of things, side of the process, is, let's say, nothing I would consider my key strength. As in every other field, I try to learn here too, and I know it will become more and more important going forward, even more important than it is already today. But I really would consider myself, and I think that's what you just said, I really consider myself as the bridge element between the guys who are dealing with those masses of data and the senior management on the other side of the process who want to have a story and who want to have, let's say, the 3-4 key insights out of that mass of data. And here you need somebody in between who filters, who boils it down, who puts some context to it, and who tells a story.
The very standard picture I have in my head is that the finance guy is a shy introvert, more than a confident manager with extroverted qualities. Have you taken any leadership personality tests that our followers and our subscribers could benefit from? Because it's really cool to understand whether you could be this bridge between two worlds. One is more of the technical and hard skills, and another is soft skills.
I actually did on various occasions. So one of them quite recently, actually, when I attended a leadership training. But we did one before, which is pretty common, I think. I guess many people will know it's the Myers-Briggs personality test. Maybe you guys have heard of it too. And the other one is, let's say, the results are pretty similar, but the approach and the kind of questions are a bit different. I'm not sure if this is a general test. Siemens internally, they are doing it on those management seminars. It's called the Strength Scope.
Wait, is it about the 5 strengths?
It's also boiling down a variety of personality components into 4 major categories, which are emotional intelligence, relationship, execution, and the way of thinking. So actually the results are pretty similar to the Myers-Briggs. Also here you have those 4 categories. And I guess many people will be surprised, because that was at least the reaction of, let's say, my fellow colleagues in our finance leadership team, that I had a pretty strong eye for introvert on my Myers-Briggs test. So I know that's correct and I know that's accurate, but I guess that's pretty surprising for a couple of people.
You know, I personally get you, and I feel like introverts are, mislabeled to the point, right? So being introvert doesn't mean that you cannot communicate well. It just means that you are a bit different in how you communicate and in which conditions you like communicating and what are other types of communication which may be like too energy consuming. So I think there is this misconception that introverts don't talk, and you kind of live in proof that it's not right.
Absolutely.
I myself also an introvert, so I face it every day.
And Matthew, do you have any like psychological or leadership tests on your mind right now? On the top of your mind?
You mean the one I took or the one I would recommend?
Yeah. Both of them.
Yeah, I had a lot, and I think also like Myers-Briggs one is kind of a good one, like any other. I would say any comprehensive test that you can take would give you interesting insights. You can also take, DISC personality assessment or whatnot. For listeners who just suddenly curious, what personality I am, I would recommend to start with something like which is very similar to Myers-Briggs, a bit more kind of like down to consumer level and a bit more interesting to read if you're not into kind of like business environment. It's called 16 Personalities. I think it's like 16personalities.com. We are not affiliated, by the way. It's not advertisement. This is just a test I took. And then I got so curious because it establishes your kind of personality. Introvert or extrovert is one of those, but there are also kind of like intuitive versus thinking, observant versus judging. There are a lot of things to that, but you get kind of like 5 letters which define you, right? Like an abbreviation. And those 5 letters have descriptions around them. Like you could be architect, you could be, defender, mediator. There are like those types. And those descriptions are very accurate. They're very interesting. So what I did when I took 16 Personalities for the first time, I think it was like 10 years ago, I made my whole family pass the test and tell me like what are their personality types, because I wanted to know if it works or not, and I knew them pretty well. So I didn't tell them it's for research. I just tell them, just pass the test. So it worked astonishingly well. Like out of I think 8 people, 7 were exactly the personality kind of we had evidence for, by spending the whole life together. But if you do take the test, try to be sincere, at least with you, right? So then you get better results. I think that's the guidance.
Matthew, you just mentioned a point which I would like to pick up, because I think this is very important to convey to all the people listening in. I agree that, let's say, those personality tests, they can be very insightful for yourself and, let's say, make you reflect about your own personality. But what I find even more important, and I guess that was my major learning out of the Myers-Briggs test, maybe as a short context, when we did that together as a management team, we had a management coach with us to moderate this a bit and to moderate the results. And he told us, you briefly touched on it already, but I think it's such an important point, that once you, let's say, you get your personality result, first of all, this is not carved in stone. And second of all, even if you're an introvert, for example, it doesn't mean that you can't act like an extrovert, right? It just does mean that naturally it takes more energy away from you. And
that's a very important
point. Exactly. And the classic example for the introvert-extrovert thing is presenting in front of large audiences, right?
Yeah.
And what he said is, of course, for an introvert, it takes away so much energy, not during the presentation, but mostly because you can't concentrate the day before or even the night before, because you think about that big presentation. And let's say it can get better with repetition, right? With a routine. And ultimately, it will take less energy away from you.
Kind of like a skill.
Exactly. That's a very important concept to understand, that this is not a label for you and you are that way and you can't do the other way, but it just naturally takes more energy away from you. I think this is very important to understand.
One more test that I've taken recently is the 5 strengths test. It has a very interesting concept that, for example, each and every of us, we do not have weaknesses, but we have our strengths that are less developed.
Okay.
And that's exactly something that you're referring to.
Right, points in the same direction.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a personal question? A question which I'm personally interested in talking to you.
For sure, go ahead.
How does one start financing?
You mean
I know that's
pointing to personal finances?
Yeah.
Like investing personally?
Let's talk. Like, I understand that you deal with huge amounts of financial data and you do work with that, but like, I'm really curious if, and sorry if that was a harsh jump, but like
no, I love this shift. Like, okay, now like after you establish your personality, the next step is to start investing.
Yeah. So
I was even surprised when you asked me before asking a personal question. Usually you're not so polite.
because again, like you mentioned before that you had your habits built, you have a picture of yourself as a person you want to become. Then you went deeper into your habits, then into personal growth. We jumped on our like personal skills and character types. And then but each and every of us, we have our goals. And one of our goals and one of the goals of this like podcast to bring more opportunities of like personal growth to people. And that's something that we're talking about with you tonight. Everything about career and personal growth. So in order to, for example, us to enroll into a really, I don't know, some kind of the executive MBA program. For example, I know that Stanford offers their MBA programs for like $400,000. That's when personal finance matters. That was the loop.
That's true. Okay, where to start with? So maybe first of all, I would say I even started to spend time and learn about more how to personal invest rather late, considering my professional background. Back when I was 19.
Matthew, do you hear the same thing that I hear? It was like rather late.
I think we just had like cultural miscommunication, right?
Yeah.
On this spot, you know, like Basti, for me and Veronica, it's like it's the same if Veronica would tell me, you know, I started rather late when I was, 7, you know, like I had a bit of my own money, late. So I started. So that was rather late. So for us, it's of course like shocking. It's like 19, wow,
absolutely shocking.
I get that. Relatively speaking, I'm fully with you guys. Okay, the rather late.
So what happened? You know, like you are 19, maybe you have a side gig or something, you're still probably like educating yourself a lot, and then suddenly you decided to invest. Like what happened?
So my very first investment vehicle, or my very first investment I took with my own earned money is basically employee shares from the company, right? Because it's
lucky you.
Yeah, lucky me. It's it's made easy. You're introduced to that concept very quickly when you join a company, of course. But so that was my first personal investment. Back at that time, to be very honest, I didn't put too much time into learning about stock markets, about, let's say, how money works and all that kind of stuff. This I was starting a bit later. What's very important to mention, I think, is that really none of it, or very few of it, I actually learned in university during my studies. This is all the knowledge I acquired here. And I mean, I'm, let's say, far from being at the end here. But the knowledge which I acquired is mostly through online resources, through YouTube, through podcasts, and through reading books, related books.
The first thing you did is actually like invested into company stocks, but let's admit that it was not the really conscious action, but rather than just like, okay, you have this chance, you have this opportunity, and you just took it. What if you do not have the chance? My first question is, what is the minimal sum to start with? And where to go? Some kind of platforms or...
Yeah. So this is a very good point to start with. I think the question of a minimal amount to take care of your own personal finances and start to invest. Of course, it depends a bit on the asset classes. If we want, we can also dig into that a little bit. But I think talking about stocks, for example, nowadays with all the platforms available, with all the low fees, there is no minimal amount. Like in theory, you can start investing with $10 a month. No problem. So I guess if you're pointing into the direction where you say, okay, you need to make a certain amount of money a month, and then you can start working on your personal finances. So there's no minimal amount to it.
Where do I go? Like, let's say I have, I don't know, $1,000 to invest.
Yeah. So first of all, before doing anything, I would encourage everybody to, let's say, first do yourself the favor and acquire some financial education. There's a lot of resources. Today, I'm convinced you can access everything you need for free. There's a lot of great resources on YouTube. There's, of course, a lot of great resources with books. So I guess we get to a couple of recommendations a little later. But in principle, I think in the, let's say, in our digitalized world today with resources like YouTube and blogs and whatsoever, you have everything you need for free. Second step, if you feel comfortable and ready to go ahead, define for yourself what is your risk profile and build at least a very high level investment strategy for yourself. Starting from there, you can define which asset classes you want to be part of your portfolio. And only then, this would be at least my advice, really start investing. But then also don't wait, because I know a lot of people who then overthink before putting in their own money. Yeah, always talking about skin in the game, right?
Yeah.
And then don't wait too long, but just start. And you will see it will encourage you, because like now you're talking about your own money being at risk, so to speak, right? So that itself will encourage yourself to invest more time into learning more and into acquiring more knowledge. That would be my advice.
That's a great advice. And then when you talk about determining your own risk profile, you're probably not talking about, like determine, okay, am I a risky person or not, or like what kind of personality I have. It is connected to that, but if I understand you correctly, it's more about what kind of assets do you get, right? How much money do you want to make with them and how soon, and how ready you are that you want that, like the stock market will go in a different direction, for example.
Absolutely. So it's about the choice of asset classes, of course. And on the other hand, how you balance the asset classes in your portfolio, right?
Yeah, I'm also curious. So there are a lot of platforms out there, and I also tried to get into that a bit with limited success and then limited unsuccess. But what I noticed is that if you take any platform, there is usually this emulator option or something like that. So even if you don't have money, right, you can have a virtual money and you can invest them virtually in the stock market and see, okay, would you win money or not? So it's kind of like, it's a daunting exercise because they usually give you like $100,000 and you can put them on Apple or whatnot, right? And then in a few months you see, okay, wow, I could have made a lot of money. And then you think, okay, I should have been investing real money. But on the flip side, if you lose, you can learn from it. And also you can get into that tomorrow, right? And you can learn in parallel without risking anything. So I would just second your point that, learning, educating yourself about how investments work is important, but also that there is like so much technology involved right now that you can literally run a simulator with real stock market and just play this game with yourself with no money involved.
Basti, do you think it would be a good idea to do that, like on a simulation?
Absolutely. I mean, that's, for example, this is one of I would also consider this a learning resource, right?
Yeah.
And that's a very good one. I remember we did that in 10th or 11th grade, I think, in school, which was pretty cool and which was actually also my first touch point with stocks in general or the stock market. What I need to add, honestly, is that when it comes to stock picking and investing in single stock, my company shares the only one of that kind. I don't even spend so much time into stock picking because honestly, I don't really believe in it. When it comes to stocks, I invest via index funds. That's it. So, but to acquire, let's say, a certain knowledge and a certain feeling about the stock market, and by the way, also maybe to, let's say, to see that individual people over a long term very rarely smarter than the industry. Yeah. This is a very good option. Yeah, I would agree.
And do you have anything else in your portfolio rather than the stocks? And another question is whether you invest into the US or Chinese market. Maybe something else.
Yeah, two very good questions. So generally, I think I would, let's say, split out my portfolio into two components. One of them is let's say, there's obviously always a little bit of risk, but I would call it the low risk portion and the high risk portion. The low risk portion is generally a cash reserve for, let's say, private emergencies which occur, and highly rated bonds. So, for example, German government bonds or US government bonds. When it comes, so that's the boring part. when it comes to the not high, but I would call it higher risk portion, obviously, let's say the key asset for me is still stocks. There's no way around that from my perspective. But as I said, I don't believe in neither stock picking or timing the market out, so any kind of investing which you would refer to as active investing. Yeah, I'm more convinced about the concept of passive investing. So picking an index fund, and coming back to your second question, it's not limited to the US market, to the Chinese market, or to any other market. It's basically a global investment into the global stock market. And what you're doing basically, if you hold that investment, and that's the whole strategy behind it, you're picking up, let's say, the average market yields, and you don't try to, let's say, pass the right point in time when to buy and sell, or picking single stocks where you think they overperform a global index.
Do I understand you correctly that I just go with, I don't know, a fixed amount every month? Like, for example, every 10th of the month, I just invest, I don't know, $1,000.
You can do that. That would be actually my advice to most of the people, because in most of the brokers, if not all, you can just, let's say you set this up once, and you will have that defined investment automatically submitted or executed every month. So let's say there is no chance for yourself to skip it, because you have any other cool idea what you could buy, right? Instead of investing.
I do the same with savings account every month. It's just like money just goes away to the savings account, and it's not that easy to get money back from it. So I have to live, that month without that money, and kind of.
Is it actually blocked?
Count on it.
Right, very good.
It's almost blocked. It's just like 2 withdrawals per month, and I had situations when I needed a free withdrawals because I don't want to withdraw everything, right? So I just withdraw a bit of money which I need right now. So it's you kind of like you get out of withdrawals quickly, and it's kind of a game.
And coming back to the advice, and especially about the stock market, gold, real estate, and cryptocurrency are not in your portfolio.
No.
I would also add to that, Basti, so agencies, personal brokers, private brokers, online platforms. When you select the broker, do you rely on maybe like some common platforms where you do everything yourself, or you work with people who have agencies for that and stuff?
So let's say I've picked a platform which is not more than a broker, so there's no investment advice or anything, because I want to take all the decisions. I want to have full control. And coming quickly back to putting in some time and effort to acquire some financial education yourself, for me that absolutely led to not having someone else to control my money, but I want to have full control. So I'm using brokers, of course, but I'm doing everything on my own, which is, investing in, talking about stocks and index funds, which is fairly easy. There's a couple of things to keep in mind, talking about fees, talking about fund size and so on, to reduce at least those risks and downsides when we talk about fees. But here I'm doing everything on my own. Other asset classes, to touch briefly on that, are cryptocurrency, but to be more specific, only Bitcoin. In a nutshell,
like Bitcoin, literally that type. Okay, interesting.
Not Bitcoin Cash, not
Ethereum,
not that
like
scam.
That.
Exactly. So Bitcoin, because it's the only truly decentralized network which is out there. We could dive into that and discuss that for hours now, but let's say talking about crypto, I'm only into Bitcoin. And what you mentioned before, like gold, other commodities, real estate, I don't own currently, maybe sometime in the future. But being very honest, living abroad and at least planning to continue to live that lifestyle, let's say one of the most important points for me is to not to own too many physical assets.
That's the concept, right?
So for example,
so you can travel lightly, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Of course, there's other investment vehicles, how you can invest into real estate, into gold and so on. That's out there, I know. But let's say the physical assets, that's not an option for me right now, both from a risk and chance profile. On the other hand, simply because of the reason I don't want to own too many physical assets.
And have you started using any AI tools to help you in your personal investments or maybe in your work day-to-day life?
Talking about investments, no. Maybe also here for the learning component of it. Yeah. But as investment advice, I know there's all these advisory robots out there since a while. I'm not using those. In my professional and private life, of course, let's say everything which is going on with generative AI, I'm also integrating that in my day-to-day life, of course. Yeah. Even though what has to be added, and I think this will remain for quite a while, talking about the professional context and my field of profession in corporate finance, there's limited potential to it. The simple reason is data protection and data security, right? So you need to be very careful what you share with the language model. I mean, I guess, most of the bigger companies, they are working on own generative AI models. I think there will be big developments coming up pretty soon. But right now, using it here and there, of course, trying to learn, trying to get better at prompting and so on. But into my daily work life, I've not included it too deeply so far.
Yeah, by all means, you simply can't use the publicly available large language model for that, right? So I know that a lot of companies are working right now on an enterprise solution for that, and some companies try to host their own models, and then they kind of like a boxed inside of your environment. But still, yeah, I agree with you that we are not really there to also trust that system with any financial decisions. So it's more like guidance. But since the error rate is still quite high, you have to check the output of such models. So if it's just checking the grammar in a business email or maybe structuring your presentation a bit better, that works great. But maybe not for financial tools yet, right?
Absolutely. So there's a couple of use cases where I use it already today for example, for certain brainstorming activities when it comes to, I don't know, I'm planning a new team activity or I don't know. You can expand this to a lot of areas, but for brainstorming, for example. But I think there is a way...
It's good. I
don't even know what that was.
That's even funny.
Need to check later. So
AI intervention.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Someone's listening to us. No, but I think it's pretty obvious to everybody now, and it's often discussed that there's so much potential behind it. If I think about, let's say, what we talked before, deriving insights out of data and putting context to it and telling a story about it, I think, honestly, not sure how the world look like in that area like 2-3 years from now. I think there will be major developments, but right now, I think, let's say, without those enterprise solutions, there's no real opportunity, at least for me to make use of that.
Yeah, I agree. I think, it's also connected to how much data you can put in front of such system, and connecting those enterprise systems with internal data sets in, private manner, in secure manner. That's the challenge, but the potential is there. For example, if tomorrow I ask some LLM model to summarize or explain to me a piece of a code in a language I don't understand, it will do this job pretty well, but it's just a snippet to explain. If I try to feed it with the whole code base, with 20,000 lines of code, it wouldn't work. Similarly, I think you are dealing with large data sets. So yeah, maybe if it was a small data set, we could try something. For large data sets, not really, but the potential is definitely there, and I think it will change the landscape quite a bit in 5 to 10 years from now. What would you say?
Yeah, fully agree.
So do we say that even if we had a chance to replace some of the finance areas with AI, we wouldn't do that because the AI model right now, and even furthermore, we cannot trust it just because from one point, we cannot know exactly that we can trust it in terms of interpretation of data. And at the same time, you never know who's going to use this information. So in terms of data security, it's also not a good thing to use.
I think because of the data security component,
because you're killing my hope.
I mean, let's say financial data in a company are generally, and I could imagine that's applicable for every company, are generally amongst the most sensitive data. Yeah. So as long as you don't have a limited enterprise solution, for me, at least I see no way to really use those models. Yeah. I mean, there have been some cases. I think one which jumps to mind is Samsung a couple of months ago. There were some kind of data leakage because employees have used ChatGPT with sensitive company data.
Oops.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Like directly that's going to open.chat, OpenAI or whatnot, right? And just put in the data there.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Let's say at least I read the headlines.
You never had in your instructions that we were not supposed to do that, okay?
But maybe that was a trigger point. At least I saw those emails flying around in my inbox, and I guess that's the same for all the bigger companies. Maybe that was one trigger point to, let's say, explicitly communicate to each and everybody that the current generative AI models cannot be used with any kind of, let's say, company-specific data, and obviously not with sensitive data like HR data, finance data.
So we do need regulations on that part.
Regulations or, let's say, company-specific models.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, which I also hosted on company premises, so in a secure location. So
Absolutely.
We will get there for sure. But I think, those cases of misusage, right, they just indicate how much time those models could save potentially, right, and how much potential people see in them. So, for example, in any company, there is regulation. You sign in your contract basically that you don't trade the company data, you don't expose company data, and for that reason, people are very sensitive to use external services. Like if in my company, I suddenly decide to use Notion instead of Atlassian, Jira for Kanban board for my team, that would not go well, right? Because I'm exposing company data to Notion, which is a service which is not yet passed through compliance check and departments and everything. And I'm probably using a personal account like people do. So all of that is a recipe for failure. And it's the same with ChatGPT or any other LLM model, right? You shouldn't use your personal account on some service and put company data there in general. It's just much more tempting now to do so.
Okay, Matthew, you convinced me that I cannot use it for my work, but at least...
No, you should use it for your work, but in a responsible manner,
But in general, I know that you are very good and you know all of the trends, and being as a software developer, you know for sure the trends of the AI development. When do you think will happen the day when we're gonna use AI for personal investments? Matthew, for you as a developer, and Basti, for you as a finance manager.
Okay, I think that LLMs, not AI, right? Like there is no such thing as AI yet, right? Which there are predictive algorithms and there are different kind of models, and LLMs are one of them. So LLMs, I foresee them being integrated in quite some of the investment applications on the market in the next 2 to 3 years. And they probably would give you some degree of advice or some analysis over your personal investments because, like I mentioned, it's just a smaller data set and they could tap into existing APIs and existing predictors from non-AI powered components of those brokers and systems and platforms. So then, in your nice consumer app, educating you about finances and also suggesting to invest into something, you could probably, then in a couple of years toggle AI assistant thingy, but it's very far from large scale AI invasion in the corporate work. So I see a lot of potential in the next years for financial organizations to use LLMs for other tasks, for maybe boring tasks, for copywriting, for whatnot, for brainstorming for sure, but not exactly to replace accountants or let alone finance business partners.
maybe quickly touching on the second point you said, because I fully agree. Those kinds of repetitive tasks, they will definitely be, I guess at some point, fully taken over by AI. Freeing up more time for us professionals to...
Like more complicated things?
Yeah, concentrate and...
Or be creative. Yeah.
Exactly. Put more time to creative tasks, to more meaningful tasks, putting more or allocating more time to making strategy instead of wasting time with those repetitive tasks. So I would fully agree. I would like to add one point when it comes to the personal investing component, because I think, let's say, the usage of AI for that already exists with those robo-advisors which are out there. There's actually a very large number of that available already.
Oh, so they're moving much faster, actually, than I predict.
Exactly. But the thing which we need to keep in mind, there's a concept which is called the efficient market theory. And this is exactly the reason, for example, why I don't believe in that. And honestly, it's also scientifically proved that stock picking, like actively investing, and also market timing over, let's say, a long period is never more successful than, let's say, the average market yield. Like there's several studies around that.
Whoa.
And what you need to consider is by the time everybody has access to those new and better and more efficient models, you will have an even more efficient market. But the fact that you have an efficient market where everybody has access to the same information at the same time, and it translates into the stock prices. Yeah.
So chasing it, we never catch it.
The concept, exactly, the concept doesn't change. And what you're doing basically in the future, if you're using a model and you, let's say, you pick single stocks, then you're either claiming that yourself, like you are smarter than the broad efficient market, right? Or that you have a better model than the rest of the market.
Or much better data, right? If you have like a lot of data, which is hard to get,
or
then maybe. But the data is changing all the time, right? So
or that
the financial market is not a standpoint.
I completely agree. Of course, like a larger data set and a better data quality make a better model. I agree. But then, let's say, then we have the problem that the institutional players on the market, which make up, by the way, for between 95 and 98% of the whole investing volume.
They still have the advantage then.
Right? Exactly. Like you can be sure about the fact that they will have the best data models and the largest data sets and the best data quality. That's for sure.
And they have larger assets and they can trade with more leverage and take more risks. So,
absolutely.
So they're still in the game. So it's a bit like an arms race, right? So
absolutely.
You cannot really win that. It's always a bit of a stalemate. So that's the efficient market hypothesis, right?
Absolutely. I mean, many people try to prove it wrong, but as I said, there's been a lot of scientific proof that over a long term, nobody can do it.
Guys, you have to stop doing that because I need the fast, the efficient, and easy decisions.
Most important advice, there is no free lunch out there. Yeah, this podcast is going far off the trajectory how to get rich quickly. So it's not exactly
okay,
that.
Coming back to your very first pieces of advice you gave us, and you actually promised, and I did not forget about that. How about sharing some of the top books, podcasts, or any educational resources on personal finance? Because we need smart financial decisions.
Yeah, we have to make smarter decisions, right, to win at least a bit on the market. And I think all the listeners by now, we are really getting their buy-in into trading, but now they want to know how to do that. So
for sure, I can share some of that. To be honest, with podcasts, it's a bit complicated because I'm mostly listening to German-speaking content, which is, I guess, for large parts of the audience is less interesting.
But it's also, it's an interesting field which will be partially, augmented by AIs, right? Because right now there are models which can translate people speaking into other languages. So maybe in future
Absolutely.
You would be able to actually listen to German-speaking podcasts, but not right now.
Absolutely, we can surely come back to that once that's available. But let's say I noted down 2 books in specific One of them is, it's quite a classic, I would say, so I guess many people know it already. The book title is The Richest Man in Babylon by George Clason.
Mm-hmm.
It's less about technical investing or, I don't know, reading like stock charts or something like that, because honestly, here I don't have too many resources because I'm just personally not interested in, because I don't believe in it. But Richest Man in Babylon, to break it down to the key takeaways, just helps to give you a general understanding about the value of personal savings, about building productive habits, coming back to the strong habit systems we had before, and most importantly, always going through the world with an open eye for entrepreneurial opportunities, which I guess you guys are using on a day-to-day basis anyways.
That sounds like a book to read, and actually I think I hear Veronica tapping on the keyboard and just Googling it. And
absolutely Googling everything.
I need to buy this. What was the second book?
The second book basically also touches on both areas, what we discussed before, on, I would also say, on financial education, as well as on personal growth. And this is even more a classic than the first one. And I think even more people will know it already. The title is Think and Grow Rich.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is going into the same direction. It is all about building an entrepreneurial mindset and sensing you for thinking out of the box and identifying opportunities around you. Yeah? So you could actually describe also the key takeaway here in a pretty similar manner, but I can recommend both of the books to everybody. And maybe if I can name a third one, which
Sure.
is sadly, which is in German, and I haven't found an English version. It's not available yet, but I think it will be because it is very successful. And I'm sure there's, let's say, English equivalent books, but it's truly amazing. If I translate it, the title is The Only Book About Finances You Should Read, which is
and
like
what was the German title?
in German.
Uh-huh.
Das einzige Buch, das du über Finanzen lesen solltest.
Okay.
Not sure.
You know,
yeah.
It sounds far less presumptuous in German.
Yeah.
In German, it sounds like that's the way to do that. In English, it sounds a bit like, like the author was quite ambitious when he wrote that.
Yeah.
Maybe. So in German, it's a quite provocative title. Maybe by the time there will be an English version available, they will pick a different one. I don't know. But that's at least the direct translation. And the book is basically, I think this is a bit more going into the direction what you intended with your question. It is touching on all the concepts of how money works, how important savings are, how you start investing into stocks, what asset classes do even exist out there. Feeding that all or backing that all up with scientific studies without going too much into the detail and being too dry, because it's really a book for beginners who just start to educate themselves financially. And let's say if there's anybody out there who is capable to read German books, then
I would say, dear listeners and dear subscribers, now that's the time when you use the generative AI to translate the book.
Try that. It would be very cool if somebody comes back and had success with it. But yeah, for all German speakers, big recommendation without me getting anything for it. And for everybody else, try your luck with AI.
Thank you a lot. Basti, thank you a lot for the tips and tricks you shared with us tonight. Matthew, thank you for the first podcast in English we've launched today. That was a really amazing experience, and I think we're going to benefit a lot from this episode.
Absolutely. Thank you for hosting us today, Veronica, in the studio. And also, Basti, I was quite impressed with today's talk. It was so interesting. We talked about efficient market hypothesis, but before that, we talked about personality tests and such, and how you got into finance in the first place. So it was really interesting to get from topic to topic, and I think we started just with habit forming. I don't know how we got here, but it was quite a trip. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys, for having me, and thanks for the great conversation. It was really a pleasure, and I would be glad joining another episode in a while if you invite me again.
Cool. Thank you a lot.
Thank you.